Hello world! My name is Tatiana Haiduk.
And I am Polina Boychuk.
And you are a wonderful audience of Kyiv Not Kiev.
You know what? We have been doing this show for almost 2 years already. And I believe now is a high time to reinvent the way that we are doing it and introduce a new format of our communication with you. Namely, to add some other people to our cozy chat.
In today's episode, you will learn how Ukraine approaches the EU. Livestream from the Cabinet of Ministers was the most amazing special correspondent any studio could ever dream about. Deputy Prime Minister Olga Stefanishyna.
Where to invest in Ukraine? Tips from head of UkraineInvest governmental office Sergiy Tsivkach.
What are the reliable English-speaking sources to get news from Ukraine, and why is it important to speak with the world in one language? Today we will sit with the former Kyiv Post staff writer Anna Myroniuk and we'll try to find it out.
Fresh news digest, lots of fun, so let's get started!
Ukraine is a European country, and not only geographically, it's the long history, language, culture and values that we share with the European countries. Still, Ukraine is not yet a part of the EU, but we are very keen on becoming it.
The strategic goal, EU membership, is enshrined in the Constitution of Ukraine, the fundamental law of Ukraine, and in recent years we have been working on reforms to achieve this goal. So let's look at where we are today and how far and close we are to the European Union.
And we interrupt to go live to the Cabinet of Ministers. We're talking now to the first person who comes to mind whenever it comes to European integration, Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic Integration, Olga Stefanishyna.
Madam Deputy Prime Minister, welcome to Kyiv Not Kiev. Could you please tell us whether the bilateral agenda between Ukraine and the European Union is intense now and what are its priorities?
Hello Kyiv Not Kiev. So happy that you put a lot of focus in the European affairs of Ukraine and European integration. We all remember the revolution of dignity and the values our people were standing for. Where we stand right now, what are we going to do in the future? It is something I want to discuss with you, and I'm looking forward for this discussion.
I have long wanted to add a governmental season to the one that we have with the ambassadors. So let's make it as a plan. We will open the next season of Kyiv Not Kiev with an interview with Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic Integration, Olga Stefanishyna. So stay tuned.
Meanwhile, we will prepare our viewers and explain how close Ukraine is to EU membership. So, joining the EU is a decision that is consistently supported by the majority of Ukrainians, according to the latest polls, by 62%. For them, European integration means a transition from a post-Soviet worldview, norms, behavior and quality of life to the European ones. This is the transition to one of the highest standards in the world in various aspects of life, from protecting their rights to having safe toys for children and breathing cleaner air.
For the European Union, Ukraine is not just a new big market, an educated workforce and larger economic opportunities. Our potential in energy, security and IT spheres can significantly strengthen the European Union.
The main document that Ukraine follows in order to integrate into the EU is the Association Agreement. It contains provisions on the deep and comprehensive free trade area and provides for political and economic integration. It is a kind of a roadmap that establishes the mutual obligations of both Kyiv and Brussels.
Work on the Association Agreement began back in 2007, actually when former President of Ukraine Viktor Yanukovych refused to sign the agreement. In 2013, it resulted into a Euromaidan and the Revolution of Dignity. It was unacceptable for Ukrainians who were committed to European values to see pro-Russian politicians shut the door to their European future.
The association agreement was signed in 2014. After a lengthy ratification process, it entered into force in 2017. But what does it mean? It means that after the Revolution of Dignity, when Ukraine confidently set foot on a single-option European course, and the conditions in the country have changed dramatically. Therefore, some of the provisions of the association agreement already need to be revised.
Updating the agreement at a large scale, accompanied by a full audit of our partnership with the European Union, is what the Ukrainian government named Euro Integration 2.0. This is an unprecedented process, and the European Union has demonstrated that it is ready for it during the last Ukraine-European Union summit in October this year. Yet no other country with a free trade area with the European Union has ever had such a large-scale review experience so far.
The process will include increasing quotas for duty-free trade, removing non-tariff barriers related to certification of Ukrainian products, and much more.
Next, a visa-free regime. Ukrainians have been using the benefits of the visa-free regime with the European Union since 2017. But did you know that this is not the only visa-free regime that integrates Ukraine into the European space? Apart from it, there will be 5 more. Aviation visa-free regime, agreement on a common aviation space or open sky. It was signed in October on the sidelines of the EU-Ukraine summit.
Customs visa-free. Ukraine's accession to the EU customs system will become possible when in 2022 Ukraine accedes to the European Convention on Common Transit.
Energy visa-free regime, joining the European Energy Network, ENTSO-E.
Industrial visa-free, the signing of the ACAA agreement on conformity assessment and acceptance of industrial goods.
Digital visa-free regime, integration into the EU digital single market.
The plans are extremely ambitious and not limited to this. Ukraine also joined the EU programs on environment protection, fighting climate change, including European Green Deal policy, financial cooperation, and creating equal opportunities for citizens within the framework of the Biarritz partnership. Work in these areas had already begun.
Ukraine is most willing to become a European integration leader in the region. Together with Georgia and Moldova, it has initiated the Association Trio, so-called.
To base its relationship with the EU, the trio follows the principle more for more. Those who do more to reform the country in line with the EU standards will have a right to claim higher financial assistance and political support. The EU has officially supported such a format.
Moreover, Ukraine has initiated the signing of bilateral declarations with the EU countries in support of the European perspective of the country. They have already been signed with Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, Slovakia, and Estonia.
Don't think that only government leaning towards the EU. Distributing European values is at the core of every project implemented by local communities, public organizations, universities, businesses, and others.
Environment protection, gender equality, European-style transparent government, educational and cultural programs, support for business initiatives. These are just a small part of the project that Ukrainians implement together with European partners, directing Ukrainian society to the principles of respect, equality, tolerance, and non-stop development.
Ukraine is a European country, and Ukraine's place is in the European family.
We, the Ukrainians, keep saying that Ukraine is the top destination for investors' money. So why does the investment inflow keep looking this way? The largest foreign investor in Ukraine is Cyprus. Companies registered there invested almost $15 billion in Ukraine in 2020, but I feel like some part of the money are just the Ukrainian money finding their way back home. The Netherlands poured a bit fewer money, around $10 billion, while the UK invested almost $3 billion.
Foreign investors are traditionally interested in a manufacturing sector, agriculture, and IT, and it seems that now the most promising is the last one. In 2020, tech companies with Ukrainian roots attracted $571 million from local and foreign investors, which is $27 million more than in the 2019.
Just recently, Grammarly, the popular auto editing tool for writing, raised $200 million in funding from foreign investors. Now it is evaluated at $13 billion, being not just a unicorn, but a decacorn.
Where to invest in Ukraine? What are the promising fields? And how can the state give a hand to foreign investors to make him feel comfortable and safe? We've invited Sergiy Tsivkach, Executive Director at UkraineInvest, to help us to find out. Sergiy, it's a pleasure to welcome you in our cozy studio, finally. Let's start with the basics. What do you believe to be the most promising sectors of the Ukrainian economy to invest?
Thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here today with you. I believe in Ukraine as a whole country, so our whole country is available for investments and we have so many opportunities, but definitely we can think of some priority sectors, the most maybe important for development of Ukraine and the most attractive sectors for investors. Well, priority would be agri-processing, manufacturing, infrastructure, energy sector, and sectors like automotive and other sectors that lead to development actually of manufacturing in Ukraine. I think they would be the most important for Ukraine right now.
Is the attention of UkraineInvest focused on each of the sectors, or one sector is more of a priority than another?
We have focused on all sectors of economy, but we divide that focus between our managers. So we have some managers that are focused on energy and agriculture, some managers that are focused on infrastructure and maybe, seaports development. So it depends on a specific project. When we look at this project, then we appoint or assign a manager or investment nanny, as we are called sometimes, to that case, and then they manage it and they provide the most effective support that is possible.
How big is your team?
Our team is just over 30 people, but out of 30 people we have people that deal with accounting, with communications, with administrative issues. So out of those 30 plus people we have about 15 people that are experts in investments, financials, economics and legal as well.
That's a pretty big team. What are
Not big enough.
Not big enough.
Yes, for such a big country with some very big potential for investments.
What are the major projects that UkraineInvest is now promoting in order to attract foreign investors? Can you please name some of the most important ones for the team?
We promote different sectors of economy and we promote different areas available for investments. So such areas like privatization, for example, or concessions, they are our special field of activity and we promote them by personal meetings, we promote them on our UkraineInvest guide. We have UkraineInvest guide. It's an online tool. It's quite a big, actually, analytical instrument. It's about 300 pages about Ukraine, sectoral overview, about specific projects, and you can find information there about privatization, concessions, PPP projects, and also about private projects. So we promote them on our UkraineInvest guide. Any investor in Ukraine can approach us and ask us to present their case to a wider audience. It could be investor who is looking for a project or a project that is looking for investor. It can go both ways. So our main projects now that we want to promote connected to manufacturing. And we are doing a program that is called Make in UA, so produce or manufacture in Ukraine, because from our point of view, we believe in future of Ukraine as strong European manufacturing hub, specifically for SMEs, because big companies, they have strong support, internal support in their companies. They understand where to invest. SMEs, they need guidance. SMEs, they need support. That's why we're looking at opportunities in Ukraine. We collect relevant data for investors, like regional potential of every city and oblast of Ukraine, like natural resources that will be available for this investor in the region, labor force, or any other success stories in the region, because sometimes this is also very important. Then we promote this information abroad, and we promote in Ukraine as well, because sometimes, even when I travel throughout Ukraine, I visited more than 20 regions for the last 8 months. And sometimes I am surprised when I look at investment cases, at success cases, at business that is already developing in Ukraine.
Is there any particular investment-related success story that comes to your mind?
during last year or during several years?
During the last year.
During the
Fresh
last
one.
year. That's why I want to focus on Monks International. It's a Belgian company that came to our office about a year ago, and they were considering Ukraine potentially. They just wanted to, just in case, look at opportunities in Ukraine, how they can do business in Ukraine. So we connected them to several regions throughout Ukraine, and then Ternopil was the most effective. They provided best support for them. They gave them, as one can say, the offer you cannot refuse, because in terms of good prices, in terms of good support, in terms of continuous looking after them. And they decided to stay in Ukraine. So now they are at the stage of implementing their project, and they will launch their factory. And it's a very good example for other SMEs from Belgium, from other European countries, and from countries throughout the world. So I think that was very important. And other cases, company had started building of their plant in Ukraine just recently. That case is very interesting because the investor was attracted by previous team that was working with UkraineInvest, and we continue providing support for them. So this is about continuity, and providing support by different teams of UkraineInvest and providing support at same level of effectiveness. So company had is example of big company. They sell their products in 85 countries throughout the world. And you can go to any mountains resort or anywhere, a ski resort, and you can see their equipment used by tourists and by people that visit those attractions. So now that equipment will be produced in Ukraine, and it's a very good example.
So we already found out that it's you and your colleagues from the UkraineInvest, who we can call a promised investment nannies. And could you please tell us how exactly UkraineInvest helps investors to feel comfortable and safe in Ukraine?
UkraineInvest is a typical investment promotion agency. So what we do, we are those managers that are available to investors free of charge on behalf of government of Ukraine when they want to enter the country and think about investments or to do investment. They can approach us and ask about any specifics of legal system functioning or financial system, or how customs operate, how tax authorities operate. We explain to them all those facts, and also we support them when they want to get introduced to authorities or to businesses. We can introduce them to central authorities, to local authorities, to authorities that issue licenses or any permissions that they will need to obtain. Also, we can introduce them to legal professionals that can support them in Ukraine. We can provide this support ourselves to some extent. We cannot draft documents for them, but we can navigate them, we can guide them in Ukraine.
And what about troubleshooting?
And troubleshooting, that was my next topic that I wanted to switch to. Troubleshooting is a very important part of our business because investors, when they are faced with cases of bureaucracy sometimes, or with some, administrative issues, or in case of any enforcement agency, maybe was a bit too harsh with them from their point of view, they can approach us and we assess the case. And when we can see that there was definitely an issue on behalf of state or any authority, then we interfere and we become those mediators between investor and state authority. And we try to explain to both parties, how to make it work better, how it make it work better for investment and for development of our country. And we have a very good track record here. During last years, 20 in 21, we have managed to resolve 33 systemic issues, the big issues that investors were facing. And the total amount of unlocked investments during this period was more than $1 billion.
That's a great number.
Impressive.
I suppose there is some kind of state program for attracting investments and investors. Could you please tell us and the viewers of Kyiv Not Kiev something more about this program?
Finally, Ukraine can have that competitive advantage because during all years of the independence of Ukraine, we did not have any investment incentive program that was, based on legislative support. And now we have presidential initiative that is called State Support for Investment Projects with Significant Investments, or how experts and people call that law, Investment That is Law. From September 2021, that system is fully opened to investors because we have law, we have secondary legislation, we have institution that is responsible to provide investors with support according to that law. And that institution is UkraineInvest. We were designated by the government of Ukraine. And now we are working on preliminary applications. We are transforming them into formal applications and soon will be applying to Ministry of Economy with these applications. At the moment, we have preliminary 27 applications for about $2 billion. And this is a very good sign, but I'm sure that after we will submit our first formal applications, the number will increase significantly because investors, they want to see how the system operates. Will it operate effectively or it will be a long way, bureaucratic way? So for us, it's very important now to open that system with first applications. I'm sure that the system will be improving and developing because, again, for the first time in Ukrainian history, we have that system. But it's a very good step forward. And I also need to mention another initiative, the law on industrial parks. In Ukraine, we have a new law that has been passed on the 7th of September this year. And now we will have a new system of incentives for industrial parks. This will also be a very effective way to attract investors, and specifically investors maybe of a smaller scale, because the investment nanny law is about support for investments over 20 million euros within 5 years. And the law on industrial parks provides incentives for any projects. So it could be 100,000 euros or $100,000 or any amount that can be invested and can fall under this system.
Mm-hmm. How many foreign countries are seeking for support of UkraineInvest?
According to the law on state support for investment projects, there is no difference or no special treatment for foreign companies or for Ukrainian companies. So any investor can apply. And it's a very good thing because we need to ensure that we have level playing field. And also, my personal view is that we need to promote foreign direct investment into Ukraine by helping Ukrainian businesses develop. Because if you are a foreigner and you see a successful Ukrainian company, you would also be willing to come to the country and do your business. But if you do not see any, successful business, how you can invest? You will be a bit, stressed, and you will make some double checks. So, according to the law, we have Ukrainian investors and we have foreign investors. 17 applications actually come from Ukraine, and 10 from foreign investors. But in terms of money, in terms of amount of investment, they split evenly. So it's $1 billion and $1 billion. Yeah, and we hope that we will have those applications submitted to Ministry of Economy quite soon. This system also changed UkraineInvest, because before we were working more as a promotion agency, because our main role is to promote Ukraine, is to bring success stories from Ukraine, latest data from Ukraine, and latest opportunities for Ukraine to international arena and present that menu to investors worldwide. But now, because we have to provide support to investors when they create applications to the Ministry of Economy and apply for state support, we are acting now as investment bank. So we're working on feasibility studies, we're working on financial models, and on all other documents that are required according to the secondary legislation of government of Ukraine. So we are developing, we are evolving, and it's a very interesting task and challenge for us.
What would you like to say to potential investors that are looking Kyiv Not Kiev right now?
Invest in Ukraine, invest with UkraineInvest.
We are by no means going to leave you without a news digest so that you are aware of what Ukraine lived through last week. So let's go! Last week, Bellingcat investigative journalists published a report on a Ukrainian intelligence special operation to seize Russian war criminals who killed Ukrainians in Donbas.
The plot is James Bond worthy. Ukraine's Central Intelligence Agency has been preparing an operation for several years to arrest Russian mercenaries who fought in the Donbas. To do this, they created a seemingly private military company and on its behalf recruited several dozen of soldiers of fortune.
The plan was as follows. The plane with mercenaries, which according to the legend was supposed to fly from Minsk to Istanbul, was to be landed in Kyiv, where the SBU would arrest the war criminals.
The flight had all the chances to bring 33 scumbags to justice as a final destination. But it didn't.
Just before the start of the operation, the presidential office has postponed it for a few days. It was not the president who gave the instruction, but the head of the office, Andriy Yermak. Bellingcat journalists claim that. So according to Yermak, carrying out the operation on the scheduled day would violate another truce signed by Ukraine and Russia before it began. The presidential office did not respond to the journalists' inquiries or comment on it.
Meanwhile, while the mercenaries were in Belarus, they were arrested by the Belarusian Special Services. At the time, illegitimate President Lukashenko was celebrating a pseudo-election victory and feared that Russian troops had entered the country to destabilize the situation in it.
What a brilliant operation against criminals who killed hundreds of people in the Donbas region and downed a Malaysian Boeing. And what a finale.
We continue to follow this story and will keep you updated. Russia continues to withdraw troops on the border with Ukraine. Tens of thousands of Russian troops have reportedly gathered at the border with Ukraine, and experts fear Russia could be about to stage a repeat of its 2014 invasion. The Defense Ministry of Ukraine said in early November that about 90,000 troops were massing on the border.
Concerns over Russia's possible next move when it comes to Ukraine come against a wider backdrop of deteriorating relations between Russia and its allies on one side and Europe and the United States on the other, reads CNBC.
Tensions have emerged on a number of fronts, from energy and political meddling to cyberwarfare and migrants, with Russia accused of helping Belarus to orchestrate a growing migrant crisis on the EU's doorstep.
Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba, in his interview to CNN, said,
"We think President Putin orchestrates these tracks of diplomacy and of aggressive diplomacy and aggressive military actions in order to kind of invite Europe to a dialogue and to press out concessions from them."
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned that should Russia commit further aggressive acts against Ukraine, we are committed, and Germany is committed, to taking appropriate action. Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg called on Russia to be transparent, prevent escalation, and reduce tensions.
Another source of underlying tension is energy. Russia is accused of orchestrating an energy price crisis in Europe in recent months by withholding supplies as it awaits the regulatory green light for the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline.
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson warned earlier last week that the EU needed to choose between mainly Russian gas and supporting Ukraine. From boring to joyful, the Ukrainian exhibition She's Science by STEM's Femme keeps impressing the world. Here are Ukrainian female scientists in Berlin. Here, our Polina tells about them in Brussels. And look what a warm reception they get overseas in San Francisco.
The art project She Science tells us about 12 female scientists from Ukraine. Their discoveries changed the world. Their example opens up a whole new world for young girls who still compete with the stereotypes that science is just for boys. Adele released a new album, and the Correspondent District Court in the Zhytomyr region released a decision by which the defendant summoned Mark Zuckerberg. Unexpected?
I'm not going to cry anyway, it's too soon to cry.
No jokes. Here is the court decision from the State Register.
The mayor of Korостyn is suing the local politician. The latter allegedly was spreading false information about him on Facebook, which had damaged mayor's reputation. And Facebook, by the way, did nothing to stop the flow of lies.
The plaintiff demands 1 hryvnia compensation for moral damage from the Facebook owner. And if this episode of Kyiv Not Kiev isn't getting enough views on Facebook, Mark, you already know the consequences.
Break news have rocked the Ukrainian and the world information space recently. Ukraine has lost one more player in the informational field. Ukraine's biggest English language newspaper, the Kyiv Post, has suspended publication after 26 years.
So how come?
On November 8, Adnan Kivan, a construction tycoon and the publisher of the Kyiv Post, stated that the newspaper will close immediately for a short time. According to him, he is going to reopen the newspaper bigger and better.
However, according to the statements published by the journalists of the Kyiv Post on Facebook, they found out that the paper had been closed and they had been all fired only when they came to the office on the morning of November 8. They consider the closure of publication an attempt to infringe on editorial independence and the dismissal of the paper's staff, getting rid of inconvenient, fair and honest journalists.
Numerous embassies and public officials expressed their deep concern about this situation. Kyiv Not Kiev joined them, supporting the Kyiv Post staff in the fight for independent journalism. To get to know more information about this accident, we have invited Anna Myroniuk, former staff writer at the Kyiv Post, to our studio. Anna, could you please tell us what had actually happened on November 8 when you and the rest of the newsroom found out that the Kyiv Post, where you all worked, no longer exists?
On November 8th, the owner of the Kyiv Post, Odessa developer Adnan Kivan, decided to fire the entire team of the Kyiv Post, the team of 50 people, and to close the media outlet, effective immediately. When we learned it, we were shocked, and this was something we couldn't have had predicted. It was completely out of the blue to us. However, there was a conflict between the owner and the team. That is why we perceive these events as something that was made by the owner to get rid of non-conformists, of honest and principle-driven journalists. What happened before is that in mid-October, the owner tried to interfere into the hiring process and editorial policy of the newspaper, which we opposed. And we believe that for that, we were fired. Also, we have information that there was some pressure from the officials towards Adnan Kivan and also the editor-in-chief of the Kyiv Post, Brian Bonner. And we believe that this pressure could have also affected his decision to close the Kyiv Post and fire the entire team.
Are you talking about the pressure from the presidential office?
I'm talking about the pressure coming from Prosecutor General's office.
Is it somehow connected to your previous materials?
Yes, there were two stories, one published in November 2020 and another one published a year after in September 2021. Both stories were focused on the performance of Irina Venediktova as a prosecutor general, and they were kind of like an audit of her work and the Prosecutor General's office work.
Okay, so today we have found out that former staff writers of Kyiv Post are launching the new media that is called the Kyiv Independent. So can you please tell us about your plans and where to read, what to see and when to expect?
Yes, today exactly we made it public that our new media is going to be called the Kyiv Independent. We're happy to announce this news. It's been 2 weeks since we were fired, and now we are ready to move forward and to open a new chapter of our story. And we invite everybody to join us in this journey. We've already launched a newsletter which is called Ukraine Weekly. This project has been effective since Monday, so it's been a week. We are now moving to launching a podcast and a few other products which we will be announcing really soon. Today we also launched a page on Patreon and various platforms to crowdfund some funding for our new media. This media will be totally independent, hence the name. There won't be any oligarch standing behind. We're gonna build a media that will be funded through various sources. We would like to attract some investments. We as journalists will also be stakeholders in this new media. So we really want to introduce something new to the Ukrainian media landscape, and we would like to build this media as something that could be self-sustainable. Also, speaking of new things, I would also want to note that we will take something from the old Kyiv Post with us to the new media, which is going to be our principles and our values and the spirit of the team of the Kyiv Post, because we kept it and we preserved it, and we will be embracing it in our future projects.
We wish you the best of luck with that. Fingers crossed for the success of Kyiv Independent.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations on that, to say so. Now, Ukrainian independent media outlets face pressure as well as lack of financial support.
Especially these tendencies frightening amid Ukrainian English-speaking media outlets. As for now, only a few publications have survived.
In June 2021, Union suspended work of its English language editorial office, saying that it has exhausted itself.
Last year, another Ukrainian media outlet shut down, UATV. It was Ukraine's only English-language TV channel. Instead of it, the government launched a Russian-language TV channel, Dom, aimed for audiences living in temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine.
Simultaneously, Russian propaganda keeps flourishing in the worldwide information field. Kremlin spreads myths and fakes about Ukraine throughout its chain of propaganda outlets. They justify Russia's war against Ukraine, occupation of Ukraine's territories as well as of Georgia and of Moldova, and badmouth Western countries.
Let me remind you that the budget of Russia today is about $350 million per year. Moscow spends more than $3 billion a year on all information campaigns against Ukraine.
At the same time, many worldwide news agencies are opening editorial offices in Russia, while in Ukraine they even don't have their own correspondents sometimes.
When we demand attention to Ukraine, but do not speak to the international community literally in one language, English, then the gap in this dialogue is filled by Russia with its alternative stories. So what are the reliable English-speaking sources to get news from Ukraine? We'll share with you the ones we trust. Let's go! And I wouldn't be me if I hadn't started with Kyiv Not Kiev. We are trying very hard to keep you informed about the most important news about Ukraine and sort out the topics that may be of interest for the foreign audience. Though we are always happy to welcome Ukrainians on our Facebook page, ми вам завжди раді. And don't forget about amazing ambassadorial interviews that we do. They're just great.
Really, really cool.
Euromaidan Press. another independent online newspaper which was launched by volunteers in 2014 to cover the Euromaidan. It covers such topics as Russia's war against Ukraine, business, economy and tourism.
The Kyiv Independent, made by the former Kyiv Post staff.
Ukraine World. It's a project about Ukraine run by the NGO Internews Ukraine. Mainly, it covers political and cultural topics and combats Russian propaganda.
Ukraine Business News. It is a subscription news site that was launched by American journalist James Brooke, who used to work in Bloomberg, the New York Times, and other famous media outlets. He mainly covers Ukrainian business news, as you can see from the name.
And make sure that you follow Ukraine Alert by the Atlantic Council, editor Peter Dickinson. It's a comprehensive online publication that provides regular news and analysis on developments in Ukraine's politics, economy, civil society and culture.
Let us know in the comments under this video where you get the news about Ukraine, and let's share your experience with everyone. Let's end this episode talking about the movies. Sean Penn is making a documentary about Ukraine. In particular, the film will tell us about the consequences of the Russian armed aggression in the Donbas region.
The winner of 2 Oscars was spotted on the front line near Mariupol. Penn spoke with the Ukrainian military and was amazed at how many women were leading combat units right on the line of contact.
And the Indian director Rajamouli has already made a film with an incredible Mariinsky Palace, the residence of the President of Ukraine. In one of the scenes, 300 actors, an orchestra and more than 50 dancers took part in the filming in Ukraine. Ukrainians Maxim Leonov and Alona Shoptenko were responsible for the choreography of the film.
Yep, that's the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, next to Alona. In 2006, when Zelensky was still an actor and producer, the couple won the Dancing with the Stars show. Polina and I also shot something great for you. The next episode of Kyiv Not Kiev is an interview with the French ambassador to Ukraine, Etienne de Poncin, so stay tuned for updates on our Facebook page.
That's it for today. Hope you enjoyed like we did. Please write in the comments what part of the episode you liked the most. Stay safe, stay kind. Remember, it's Kyiv, not Kiev, and see you soon.
From Ukraine with love.